Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. We're actually going to start off talking a little bit about things that have gone on that have nothing to do with high school sports, just because Friday turned out to be a pretty tragic day across our state. With the tornadoes. The early reports, I saw those were around midnight in Mayfield, and they were devastating. And little did I know at that point in time that about 2 o'clock in the morning, of course, Bowling Green would be hit very hard by a tornado. And it was, to be honest with you, John, it was a little bit personal for me because my daughter lives on Nutwood, which is where, at one end of it, the tornado touched down and went down the bypass there. The house across the street from where she lives, the second floor was taken off of it. Her house was not hurt. Her vehicles were not hurt. It's one of those moments, as she was telling me yesterday, once they came outside and looked around, she broke down and cried in her yard because it's one of those moments where she both felt blessed and guilt because, everything for her was fine, and people around her and people she knows, they were devastated by the tornadoes. And to that end, the student sections here at Glasgow and Barren County are doing some things to try to help out. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that to start with, even before we get to the basketball. And then also one quick programming note. We only have a 40-minute show today because Campbellsville Lady Tigers basketball will be on immediately after us. It starts at 4:45. Of course, that team features Bailey Pettigo and Elizabeth Bertram from Barren County players and Ashanti Gore from Glasgow. They're all on that Lady Tigers team. I think they're number one in their conference, or number one in the nation, maybe in NAI. So anyway, back to the tornado stuff. So one of the things that's happening is the Barren County Student Section is going to do a donations for the American Red Cross Relief Fund at the door before tomorrow night's game when they host Caverna. The girls' game's at 6 o'clock. They were supposed to do this tonight when they play South Warren, but that game got canceled, obviously, because everybody over in Warren County and Bowling Green, they're dealing with the aftermath of this tornado. So they're going to do that tomorrow night, and then the Glasgow Dog Pound, their student section, they're doing some work with, I think it's the Friskies Resource Center there at high school, and they're going to do cash and gift cards that they're going to use, I guess, to maybe for the Red Cross Relief Fund as well this week at the two games they have, and I think they're doing some stuff during the day at the school as well. So, good for our young folks to step up and try to help out. I'm sure they know a lot of these kids just through the years of competing in different sports with them, maybe playing AU, the ones that do soccer, maybe playing the Sky Conference. I'm sure they know a lot of the kids over there in Warren County and Bowling Green. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is Mike Fogel is putting together a truck that's going to take supplies to Mayfield. It's going to leave at 8 a.m., tomorrow from the parking lot at Dollar Tree over there. Mike, his daughter, Micaiah Fogel, is a senior on the Glasgow Lady Scottish basketball team. So he and his family are going together with that. And it's kind of the typical need stuff for these situations. A lot of times people, run out and buy all kinds of things, but a lot of times it's just the basics, things like water, packaged water, food items like cans and box good food items, things that are non-perishable, hygiene products, and baby and adult diapers, pillows, blankets, and then some twin-size sheets, that kind of stuff. So they're doing that. You can take some stuff over there, and the truck will leave at 8 a.m. in the morning. Before we get to the basketball, any thoughts on the situation from the weekend, John?
Well, it's not just the student section. It's the FFA, Barren County FFA, is having drop-offs from 8 to 3:30 the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. I think each Barren County school, it's all during the day too. Each elementary school and middle school and high school have been assigned different things to bring too. Okay. So it's not just student sections. It's FFA. It's school-wide resources and district and so forth. So yeah, it's. I remember in this state, the biggest one beforehand was in 1974, the one that hit Brandenburg, killed people in Meade County, and also killed people in Greene and Taylor. That was pretty much the biggest one that I can remember, but, this one was much bigger than that one. It's just, there's not much to add. It's just, it's it's a travesty to the people that lost their life and property, and a life is a lot worse than losing property.
Yes.
But I did not realize at the time that I think up to 11 people were killed in Bowling Green. I mean that's obviously close to home, and we just we're fortunate. There's a lot of problems that we have in society, but just one of the things this country and state have always done quite well in terms of disasters and need and things like that. We've a very generous society as well.
Yeah. It's often that I wish that we were more like ourselves during our toughest times when the times are good.
Yeah.
Which we'd spend a little more time maybe being thankful during the good times and being kinder to one another. Really.
Right.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about high school basketball then. We'll start out with the Trojans. We're going to break this up into two sections. We're going to do the boys, and then we'll have a second segment on the girls. So the Trojans, they went 2-1 last week. We mentioned they had a really tough schedule to open the season.
5 straight on the road.
Yeah, 5 straight on the road. Then they when they came home and played, they got to play Madison Central, which I understand was like one of the top 10 teams in the state.
Preseason, I think number 4.
Yeah. So last Tuesday they beat Hopkinsville 60-56.
That was a good win.
Yes, it was.
Hoptown's really good. They're one of the better teams in the second region. Big, athletic. That was a really, really good win. Eli Brooks had his breakout game this year. Of course, he played really well down the stretch. He had 20 points in that game and was instrumental down the stretch.
And then they went over to Tompkinsville and beat Monroe County 72-43 to open the district.
Probably didn't play all that well, but Monroe starts 2 8th graders.
Yeah.
You say that in girls, and that's not uncommon. In boys, that's way uncommon.
Yeah.
And just Barren just physically just way too strong right now for Monroe.
Yeah, Monroe shot the ball pretty well in the first half, but in the second half, it looked like Barren really kind of clamped down on defense and started taking stuff away.
Big size difference.
Yeah, and just
strength difference more than size.
Yes, started really kind of taking over in the paint, getting the rebounds, causing a lot of problems for the Falcons. And then for, Saturday at the Don Franklin Auto Classic over at Barren County High School, it was a day full of basketball. The Trojans lost to Madison Central 65-54. Now, if I'm not mistaken here, I think Barren took a 3-point lead, like 54-51 maybe it was, or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, it's a 1-point game with 3 minutes to go, and so the score's a little deceiving. But down the stretch, Madison Central made every play.
Yes,
and really played like a top 5 team in the state.
Yeah,
and Barren couldn't score and turn the ball over too much. But that was overall, I think, it was Barron's best game. Last year at Madison Central, it was a running clock.
Yeah.
And Madison Central is probably as good, not better than last year. In fact, they've added a 6'7" transfer who's really, really good as well. But Barren really fought, and they competed and played well. Just did not. It's still right now. Barren has a problem with scoring. They're not shooting very well at all free throw line. I think they're below 50% so far, and that's after 6 games. You know that you can't win shooting the ball that poorly, and it's hard to beat a team like Madison Central, beat a team like Warren Central, those type of teams if you can't. You got to put up more than 50.
Yeah, well,
and right now they're really having a hard time making shots when they need to.
Well, and you mentioned the free throw shooting, and the thing about that is a lot of their work comes inside, so hopefully they're going to get more foul shots.
Well, they're not going to end the year shooting 50%. That's going to improve, but it's something that and consistent outside shooting is something that they're struggling with right now. They're doing a good job on the boards, and Barron's hard to score against because they have good size and they're physical and they're well taught defensively.
Yeah.
But right now, creating points and to be honest with you, a consistent point guard play has been a problem so far.
Yeah.
The point guard is like a quarterback on a football team in a lot of ways. Organization and getting people spaced and things like that, and they've struggled replacing consistent minutes from it's the Gavin Withrow spot, and that's still a work in progress.
I did think when I saw them against Madison Central, I thought they had made progress in that realm. either by, I guess, Aiden Eichen handling the ball or Mason Griggs, and then I think Lane Stevens came in and handled the ball. And
Lane gives them great energy off the bench.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I thought watching them against Madison Central, they had improved in all of that.
The Central Madison does not. They're not pressuring you or anything like that as much.
They're going to give you. They kind of give you the floor to get it down the floor.
At least they did against us, Yeah. But they're athletic. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're really good, extremely well coached.
Well, and I tell you, so is Feldhaus? Is he the guy that used to be at Adair County? Is that where he was before?
No. Coach Feldhaus, of course, he won a state title at Mason County.
Mason County.
He played at Mason County.
Okay.
And his first coaching, his dad was a famous basketball. He played for his dad. Mm-hmm. His dad played at UK. Mm-hmm. Coach Feldhaus' brother played at UK for Patino. That's Darren Feldhaus.
Okay.
But Coach Feldhaus started at Clinton, and then he went to Greene. He coached my first cousin for 5 years, and he went from Greene County to Madison Central.
Okay. I knew he had been down in this area before. Yeah. I couldn't remember where.
It's been a while. He's been at Central for over 20 years.
Yeah. I just going back when people would mention, well, Feldhaus used to be wherever. They don't give you a time frame.
Right. Of course, his brother was. He's got two brothers. His brother was a coach at Russell County too, Willie.
Okay, maybe I was thinking of Willie Feldhaus then. All right. Anyway, so yeah, I thought it was a good showing for Barren in those 3 games.
If they compete like they did against Madison Central and just start making some shots, they'll give a lot of teams trouble.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Glasgow Scotties, they played Warren Central and Bowling Green last week, and it did not go well for them at all. I think I talked to Coach Willett after the Warren Central game, which was last Monday, and which they lost pretty soundly.
Gave up 61 points in the first half.
Yeah, and they didn't defend Warren Central very well, and then they made the secondary mistake of turning the ball over or making some defensive mistakes or offensive mistakes that gave Central easy baskets, and they just got in the hole. They tried to run with them to start with, and then the thing Warren Central did in that game, which they didn't do when they played Barren in that first game of the season, they shot the ball real well from outside, which is something we kind of thought the Dragons might do this year because it's something a little different for them.
Yeah, but that's a recurring. Other than North Laurel, nobody shot the ball very well against Barren,
right?
Because Barren's long.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a disappointment for them. Then they came and played Bowling Green on Thursday, lost that game handily as well.
Yeah, you would have hoped that losing to Central was one thing, badly.
Yeah.
And you would hope that 4 days later, going against Bowling Green, who's not as good as Warren Central this year, but they're not, but they're still good. That that lesson from Central would have done something, learned a lesson or something, and they got beat even worse, 97-42, and was. I guess what's disappointing from the Glasgow perspective, there's nothing good that came about either game. I'm not going to say anything that, this or that, or there's not really an excuse.
No. I
think what's disappointing is they just were not competitive.
Right.
And
they were down big early in both those games.
Not in the game, either one.
Yeah.
And with Glasgow, sometimes you say that with young players, but they're junior, senior oriented and had gotten off to such a good start. To get beat that way, I know that has to be that's a gut wrenching deal right there, because I didn't think they would beat Warren Central, but I didn't think they'd get beat that bad, and I never thought they'd get beat that bad against Bowling Green. So
I really thought that was going to be a good game.
So you can go one or two ways after this. The Glasgow football team learned a valuable lesson against Woodford County. Yeah. So you can, and this is going to come down to the players. You got juniors and seniors, mainly a lot of seniors. You can go either we're just going to do, we'll just finish the year and beat the teams we can beat, and then the teams we can't beat, we just won't. Or you can reevaluate and figure out, what's going on. And it would anger me as a player. It would anger me as a coach, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
To get beat that bad twice. And so, it's the good part to Glasgow. They've got about 20 games left. Mm-hmm. And that's good. You can really, really circle the wagons maybe and try to fix some things if you're willing to do that.
Yeah.
You got to be willing. You got to be willing to accept it, and you got to be willing to, look yourself in the mirror, and you got to be willing to if you're really competitive, to say, okay, this is not going to happen again, and this is what we need to do. So we'll see which way they go.
Well, and one of the things we talked about when Coach Willett was here, and then we talked about just generally, and they talked about during their Paul Gray press conferences, the players seem to set the expectations for themselves this year. And that being the case, I imagine maybe this is the point where, and I never put anything on the players. The coach coaches the team. He's responsible for the team. That's the way I look at it, as the adult, so to speak. But these players put out an expectation that they had for themselves this year, and maybe this is a point where they all get together and say, we got to look at each other and we've got to take responsibility for ourselves.
That's fine. But talk, you heard you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? You got to back it up.
Yeah.
You got to back it up, and it's not just talking that we're going to get better. It starts that you got to practice better. Mm-hmm. And that thing. So we'll see. Like I said, it's early. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to get beat bad, you better get beat. Might as well early.
Yeah.
And then grow from that.
Yeah.
But it was not a good week.
No, and like you mentioned, basically that's what happened with the football team. They took that early beating from Woodford County, and obviously they took it personally. The players did, I'm sure. Like we talked about then, the coaches probably didn't have to say a whole lot to them based on some of the conversations the players were having during that game on the sideline, and it bore fruit for the rest of the season. I truly believe if not for some significant injuries, they'd have been playing in that state championship game. I think they were that talented, and I think they were that motivated. So, the Scotties have a chance to bounce back this week. They host Monroe tomorrow, and they host Adair on Friday, or is that Thursday? And so, they've got a chance. Those teams aren't as good as Bowling Green or Warren Central. Let's say that to start with. But they've got a chance in those games to really focus on what they need to do.
Well, it's not – listen, let's be fair. It's not if they go out and beat Monroe County. They should.
Yeah.
It's how they play.
Yeah.
For me as a coach, it's not – I think we should win. Mm-hmm. But how we compete.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is the next time we get down, are we going to come back?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to compete? And those are little things that I would be looking as a coach is, when things are – when we're making – the game is fun when you make shots.
Right.
It's actually easy at times. Everything's easy. But what happens when you don't make shots?
Yeah.
What happens when you get behind? You got to have that will to come back. So we'll see where they go with this.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Caverna Colonels, they picked up a win and they picked up 2 wins, actually, because they beat Shawnee last Monday, and then they beat Foundation Christian. Foundation Christian is a school that will be in the 4th region beginning next year, I think is the way it works out, playing basketball. I don't know if they have girls basketball. They may only have boys.
Good luck.
Yeah, because
they got beat 75-10.
Yes. I'm working on a story about the future of the 4th region, and hopefully I can get it done someday. It's off of the last KHSA board meeting that was in November. Their next meeting's in January, and there's some discussions going on about how things are going to be working out.
If they're thrown in there with Bowling Green and Warren Central.
Well, they're requesting to be in the 13th district instead of the 14th. Maybe that'll be good. I don't know. It certainly won't be good to be in there with Bowling Green and Warren Central. So anyway,
I don't know. Franklin Simpson Russellville either is not.
I guess they think it's just less, which they're not wrong. At least historic, in the last 20 years speaking.
Yeah.
But and then they lost the district game to Greene County 62-48. The Colonels are 0-2 in the district right now. They have a really young team. They have experienced players in terms of they played the whole team's back from last year.
Yeah, I got Barren tomorrow.
Yep, tomorrow night. So it'll be an interesting test it'll be an interesting game, I think. But I would say Barren on boys and girls right now are just a good bit stronger than Caverna.
I think that's fair.
All right. It's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, I put Barren County first on the list down here to talk about for the girls, but let's actually talk about the Lady Scotties first.
All right.
Because, they lost their first 3 games of the season, and I had talked to Coach Pippen. We talked about this some last week. Coach Pippen had mentioned, when you're not making shots, everything else looks bad, and that had been the case. They were not. Their scores were not close, but they were not getting beat in the way that you would think they were. They were basically just they couldn't score, and eventually other teams would score points. Well, they kind of turned that around on Friday and Saturday. I mean, they ended up winning at Todd County. I guess that was on Thursday, 48-47. They were up by more than that. They held on to win that game. That was their first win of the season. And then Washington County, now Washington's not great.
Really?
But let's be honest. In this area at the moment, there are a lot of not necessarily great girls basketball teams.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I do think it's also fair to say it does help when you start to make some shots.
Yeah,
they start off the week, they lost to Warren Central too.
That's right.
Yeah, 49-41, but at least they scored.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think the competition level was not quite as good, but you still they took advantage of that.
Yeah.
And maybe that will help their confidence. I know I think it's Ashton Botts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she had a good week. I mean, she had 19 against Todd Central and came back, had 11 against Washington County. And Mia Cassidy, she's been in double figures, I think, every game. I know she's been in double figures her last 3. She had 18 against Washington County. So,
yeah.
She's has been known as a good shooter, and she plays really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chloe Hill had a double figure, a couple in there. So, yeah, it does help to score. It makes everything else a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants to get shut out, and they started off 0-3.
Yeah.
So getting 2 wins last week is good for them.
I think I've seen that was their second or third game of theirs I've seen. And the thing is that they kept looking like they were so close. It's just that they were not like they got shots at the rim. They were running the offense, getting what they wanted. Just they were hitting the bottom of the rim or just missing the shots off the backboard, things like that. And it looked to me getting that first win under their belt when they played Washington County on Saturday. They played hard on both ends of the floor. They ran their sets and they finished. And then that opened up other things. Talking about Mia Cassidy getting some open threes, Cadence Birds hitting a couple of shots. A couple of the seniors, 3 of the seniors came in. Mariona Bradley, Micaiah Fogel, and Skylar Campbell. They're not really scoring points, but they come in and provide some quickness and defense. And it kind of looked like everything was just meshing for them. And to be honest with you, with the way this region is at the moment, after Bowling Green and Barren, everybody's probably pretty even. I mean, if you get right down to it, there's not really a player outside of maybe Leah Trin at Greenwood who can just really score on their own. And so that just leaves the door open, for Glasgow to win quite a few games as long as they can get their offense working. And because they're playing, I think their defense is pretty good. It's just their offense was just struggling up until this past week.
Well, Coach Piven knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And they'll get better. And I think they'll be solid defensively. It's can you score enough points? And that's, other than Metcalf, that's most people's trouble. And Metcalf's not scoring like they did last year.
Yeah.
But Metcalf is probably the, outside of Barren and Bowling Green, probably the next best offensive team in the region, though they did lose to Monroe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that kind of going back to the point of the region, any given night, you don't know what the other teams are going to be doing.
Franklin is having a good year.
I do think they have the talent. They're just pretty young.
Again, I don't know if they've beaten any world beaters yet, but they're under 4-0, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they and Logan County have not lost a game at the moment. I think Logan's kind of like Glasgow. They're doing some good things. I think they suffer from not just really having a player that can really just set things up for themselves.
Yeah.
And I know it's all about team, but in basketball, if you got a player who can get their own shot off, that changes everything, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Meanwhile, the Barren County Trojanettes, they had a good week, although they did lose on Saturday, but they started off with the win over at Hopkinsville, 64-42, beat Monroe on Friday, 63-27, before losing that Somerset game on Saturday.
Yeah, we kind of thought the Monroe County game would be competitive since Monroe has everybody back, and it started off well. Monroe was, 3-1?
Yeah.
Yeah, lost to Franklin, but beat Metcalf and beat somebody else that was considered decent.
Maybe it was Warren East they beat.
But it was.
Yeah.
But the game was no contest.
No.
I mean, Barren was up 25 at half and running clock, which is, surprising in one sense that I just thought the game would be competitive with Paisley Ford and players like that, but it was not. And Barren jumped on them and just dominated the game. Let's just be perfectly honest with you. Abby Varney had 14. Abigail Varney, she's had a really good year. She's solid. Yep. Barren had 4 players in double figures. Raven Ennis, that was her first game back after the ankle injury. She had 14. And I think Katie Murphy and Macy Lockhart both had 10 apiece. And just Barren started off a little slow, but once they kind of kicked it in, it was lights out in Monroe County.
Yeah, I think they had like a 15 or 17-point run, I think, in the second quarter, going into the second quarter. And, I mean, it was just Katie Bar to the door at that point.
It's almost to a point, and we've had Barron's had teams like this. Glasgow had a little run like this. Allen's had a run. Monroe's had a run. And in the last 20 years where one team would just kind of get on a run for a couple years and would almost like have the game won before the game started.
It was like that with Monroe. Yeah. I mean, it's like once Barren got a little bit of a run, like 4-0, 6-0 run, I think Clifton Hamilton called like timeouts.
He called
twice
3 in the first half.
Like 2 within like a minute, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to stop it.
Yeah.
But, your players, give Barren credit, but it was almost just like I never thought Monroe was going to win, but I did think it's going to be slightly more competitive than that. But Barren just jumped on them and took care of business.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a good win for them. Then they came back and they played Somerset on Saturday. And it seemed to me as I watched that game, the Trojanettes missed a bunch of shots they usually make in a game because they had a lot of the shots they wanted. They just weren't going in on Saturday. And even they in Somerset, I think, scored the last 6 points of the game, maybe.
Yeah, that's the best team they played.
Yeah,
Somerset was good. And Somerset had 7th grader had 21 points. They started a 7th grader and 8th grader. So they're going to get really good throughout the year. And they've got a new coach who won 2 regions at Lincoln County. Cassandra McWhorter is a really good coach. So both coaches are good, Piper and her. And 58-54, it's no disgrace to lose to them, but and I thought overall that game will help Barren. They just have not had very many. The Metcalf County game was close, but Raven and Ennis didn't play hardly any. So I think that game will help Barren down the road because Somerset does a lot of good things and shot the ball well. Raven had 21 and 11. Yeah. And I think Macy Lockhart, she had 14 points. And so the game went down the stretch. And the more games Barren can play that in which they're challenged down the stretch, that will really help them. Yeah. Nothing wrong with losing. You want to win those games, play tight, play those games tight and win them. That time they didn't, but that's I'm happy for them, Piper getting Somerset on their schedule. That's good. And they'll have Central Hardin later on in the year, who's one of the better teams in the 5th region. Yeah. So I think those games will be long-term very productive for them. Yeah, it was there was a point in the game where I thought Barren was going to take control of it, but they just... There were times, and then they come down, and that little 7th grader, the left-handed shooter, she had 21. She'd make a big 3. Yeah. Yeah, it was... And they made their free throws down the stretch. Yep. Yeah, like I said, it was a good game to watch. It was a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, it was well played. Well played. A couple of good teams, good players. So it was a lot of fun to watch that game. And then finally, the Caverna Lady Colonels, they beat Shawnee 50-37. They lost the district game to Greene County 60-26. Kayleana Richardson is having a solid year for the Lady Colonels. Some of his younger players, and he's got some younger ones out there, are probably struggling in some of these tougher games for them because they got a lot to catch up with. I mean, he's got 2 or 3 solid players. The younger ones are struggling a little bit, but maybe they'll get better as well as the season goes along. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, a little bit about college basketball. Reminder, we'll be getting out of here at 4:40. The Campbellsville Lady Tigers will be coming on right after us, so stick around and listen to that. It's something new we've picked up in the last couple of weeks, broadcasting their women's basketball games. A lot of local players, not just the three I mentioned earlier, but I think there are a couple from Monroe, Allen County. So, if you're interested in them and what they're doing, they're out there balling for Campbellsville. Real quick, we'll talk about the WKU Hilltoppers. They lost at home to Buffalo. To be honest with you, they looked terrible on defense playing that game. I watched that one. They just looked terrible on defense. They gave up all kinds of shots. I'm sure that they had been scouting Buffalo and knowing they didn't need to give up, but they didn't seem to defend the three very well. But then they turned right around on Saturday and just destroy Ole Miss. It's just amazing. Now, Josh Anderson was back.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the Ole Miss game.
Well, Western is still limited on the number of players they have. So you're going to see these wild fluctuations. And I did watch the Buffalo game, and they had trouble. The 7'5" guy is really improving.
Yes, he is.
But you have to almost play a zone with him.
Yes.
And if the other team's making shots like Buffalo did, it really compromises you a little bit.
Well, and they like to put him in the pick and roll, too, a lot of times.
And Buffalo is good.
Yeah.
It's one of those schools there. It's the MAC school, by the way.
Yeah.
That was the conference we was trying to get into.
Yeah.
But they're good. I'm not sure they're not better than Ole Miss. But then the Ole Miss game was fantastic. The big kid, he had, 16 points and had about 8 blocks, 7. He dominated the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing the progress that he is really improving.
Yeah.
And, of course, McKnight was good. Anderson, his first game back, he made 3 threes. That's about as many threes I've ever seen make in a game.
Yeah.
Justice was good.
Mm-hmm.
That game against Ole Miss wasn't close.
No.
They were up 18 at half, and I don't think the lead got below 15.
Yeah, they ended up beating them by 71-46. What is that, 25 points?
Yeah, and that was a great win for them against an SEC opponent on a neutral floor.
Yeah. But
the game wasn't that close. It was all Western.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been interesting if Anderson had played against Buffalo, because it felt like to me.
Well, Western's short-numbered anyway.
Yeah.
So when you take away one of their best players, that makes them even shorter in terms of that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Kentucky lost to Notre Dame.
Terrible loss. Notre Dame's not very good.
No.
Notre Dame was 3-4.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Notre Dame played that well.
Yeah.
They didn't make shots either. Kentucky offensively is I don't know who's worse offensively, Kentucky or Louisville. And I mean that. They're stagnant.
That's going to be a 30-30 game whenever they meet.
They don't. Again, the same recurring problem in terms of outside shooting. Mm-hmm. I think they're better this year, but they sure don't act like it.
Yeah.
The point guard is limited because he's not a very good shooter, but he's a dynamic ball handler, but not a real shooter, and just offensively not a lot of movement. And to be honest with you, I don't think their schedule has done them any favors.
Yeah,
they had 7 straight home games against weak opponents, and they went on the road at Notre Dame, and a lot of teams have gone down on the road at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
though this is not a really good Notre Dame team.
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of Kentucky fans who were very disappointed in the loss.
Should be.
I'm sure there were a lot. I'm sure Calipari was a fan who was disappointed as well, even though he's a coach, because it was, like you mentioned, it was a disappointing loss because I one time something that happens I think sometimes, at least for fans, is when you beat up on puffballs, is people think, oh, you might actually be good, but you're. As we discussed in the first segment, sometimes your weaknesses aren't getting worked on.
That's true. That's true. And they just offensively, they need to get better.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. They need to get better. They are better than they were last year. They have better shooters, but their shooters need to start making some shots.
So what was more disappointing, their loss to Notre Dame or Louisville's loss to DePaul?
Both were about the same. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Louisville was at home. That's a worse loss.
Yeah.
And Louisville's, they've got so many problems. Offensively, they're just not making shots. Their starting guards were 2 for 23.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing too many players. That's part of the problem. There's no rhythm, nothing going on at any rhythm. And offensively, they are as bad as they were last year, and that was supposed to have been the correction.
Yeah, and that hadn't been fixed at all.
Has not been fixed, and it's. They've had some good wins. The win against Maryland was a good win, but that was a bad loss against a very average DePaul team at home. Yeah. Thank goodness they have good volleyball and good and good women's basketball. It was a good win, Louisville against Kentucky on national TV. That's a good ball game, and the women's team was in the Final Four now.
Yeah,
it'd be amazing. The UK wins it one year, and Louisville wins it the next year.
Yeah, looks like volleyball may be the sport, at least of choice. For
of all the problems at Louisville, I mean, they just hired a new AD, interim, and president.
Yeah, we didn't get in the end.
But their women's sports are really good.
Yeah. Maybe because nobody messes with it. They just kind of let the coaches do what they do, and the people who are in charge of those programs
they're really good.
Take care of it.
They want baseball too.
Yeah, I mean,
yep.
So here's the news of the day for Kentucky. For Louisville. If they don't care about the sport, you're in good shape. If they care about the sport, it may be a mess.
Or maybe you need to start caring about some other sports.
Well, give them money, but sometimes with money comes meddling.
That's
there,
true.
John.
That's true.
So yeah, give them some money so they can upgrade their facilities and that kind of thing, and maybe do that stuff. But don't get engaged with them at all. Just let these people do what they're doing because they're doing a good job.
Yep.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week at 4:00.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.